injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
Hello, Marlins fans, and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by Burger and Hicks. As always, you can check out Burger and Hicks on their website, on their Instagram, social media, and we will have their phone number and all the details down below to get your consultation with them. As always, we're going to have a smaller stream here today as the Marlins are facing off against the New York Mets for the very first time this season. I'm joined today by Mr. Eli Sussman and intern Nate, who may no longer be an intern as he just got the call up to go to his first game as a reporter for FOF this week. And so shout out to Nate. Let's go. We got the call up. We had to option Kevin down.
Yeah, that's going to be the next year. So that's going to be a Monday. Well, he'll be in, I guess, the press box report for that one. So yeah, we will figure out how to fill out that panel for that show while he's over there.
But let's start off with the Marlins getting a road series win against the feisty Detroit Tigers. This is not the Detroit Tigers of old, where it just seems like every game was an easy win against the Tigers. It was a very competitive series and very low scoring for the last two games with a total of a combined 3 runs. Let's start off, Eli. I want to get to the pitching performances because I feel like this series, including the last two, was really detailed or looked at as 2 great pitching performances by the Marlins, including probably the best pitching performance by a Marlins pitcher this season in Ryan Weathers.
It's interesting to unpack it. I'll just squeeze in Sixto into the conversation just because he allowed 0 earned runs in his start as well. It was only 4 2/3 innings, and there were 3 unearned ones in there. As you noted, the other 2, both Ryan Weathers and Trevor Rogers, were superior. I want to start. I guess we'll start with Weathers just because it's complicated when you unpack it. When it's 8 innings, 8 scoreless innings, it was a perfect game through the first 5. So it's hard to not be impressed by that. I would say his command was really great in this one. It's just that, it was not a dominant 8 innings. It was only 3 strikeouts. It was only 5 total swinging strikes in the entire outing right there. I watched it live, of course, and then I watched it back when I was cutting up some highlights, and honestly, I thought it just said more about how much the Tigers are struggling right now than it is Weathers in there. There were just a lot of really lazy roll over grounders, especially pulled to Tristan Gray at third base. That just a lot of lazy swings by the Tigers in this one that I felt kind of just worked into his favor and it helped him be as efficient as possible, where he was able to get through 8 innings. If the Marlins had a lead, maybe he gets a chance to go out there for the 9th. The only reason why they even take him out after 8 innings is because the Marlins themselves are scoreless as well, and they needed to go straight to Tanner Scott to give them the best chance of continuing that game and extending it. It was good overall and certainly encouraging. There's no way to not be impressed by 8 scoreless innings. I just say that it was an odd game just because of how much he was pitching to contact right there. I don't know if that was the plan right there. Just the combination of not too many swinging strikes, not too many called strikes. There's only so much that Weathers was doing to help himself. You got to give some credit, I would suppose, to the Marlins fielding and their defense there, because I've been really harsh on them the entire season about how bad this defense has been. And in that game, especially, he had to lean pretty heavily on them, and they stepped up. They were pretty perfect over the course of turned out to be a 10-inning game. And I guess that is one slight area where there was really nowhere to go but up for this defense to start making more of those routine plays.
Yeah. And Nate, what did you see maybe from the Marlins again, those last two games? Again, starting off, Marlins getting 5 runs, 12 hits, lost, but it seems like that game was the anomaly of the series, because if you look at the last 2 games, Marlins combined for 8 hits in total. It seems like runs were dire for both teams, which is 3 runs in total in those last 2 games. What did you see from those last 2 games compared to that first one?
Yeah, first I want to say thanks to everyone on the staff that's, helped me settle in here. I'm very grateful, especially to Eli for giving me a chance. I really appreciate it. Offensively, I mean, you're right. They only scored 3 runs in 19 innings of baseball, but when the starters are doing so good, I mean, it's really all you need. But I'd say a standout, obviously, Brian De La Cruz had the 2-run shot, only offensive runs got, especially pretty much all series. And timely hitting by Jesus Sanchez in the 10th. That's pretty much it offensively. But Otto Lopez in game 1, you mentioned, up to over 1,000 OPS, which is ridiculous, especially for someone that was a waiver claim. And it's just Peter Bendis' eyes. He's following the Rays' way of just finding guys, have some potential, but giving them a chance. And it's exactly, you point him out. There he is. He's been very impressive, along with Brujan, who's still at around 270 right now. But some progress. I mean, like I mentioned last stream, a win's a win, and starters can carry you. But I assume they're going to pick it up offensively this series, but still good sign.
Yeah, including going into extras and everything there. I also want to go into Eli, Nate, whoever wants to hop on this one. Trevor Rogers, a pitcher who's just been struggling. It seems like the entirety of this season. It might have some highs, but again, it seems like the lows were overtaking the positives in terms of Trevor Rogers. And then he came into this game only allowing 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, no earned runs, 3 hits, and about 5 innings of work. What did you guys see from Trevor Rogers, a guy battling through injury? We saw in his last start before this, he's throwing stuff against the bench, having a little tantrum after his start. And to come back to this against a Tigers team that's not bad. They're not a bad team. And to go have 5 innings of 6 strikeouts. What did you see from Trev? Oh, you're muted.
He needed this really badly because it wasn't only his previous start. It was the last 2 starts that had both been messes. I would say the one even before that against the Oakland A's, that was the game where they ended up allowing 20 runs, and he allowed the first 8 of those. Mm-hmm. You combine those last 2 outings, and he was in danger that if it was more of the same a third time out, you have to seriously question whether or not to have him in the majors. Like his overall performance this year, especially of late, was just showing a guy that was already a fringy starter and was trending in the wrong direction right there, because the obvious thing with him this season has been the velocity is not what we're accustomed to seeing, not even early last year, not even in 2022. Like it has come down significantly from what it used to be and from what it ever has been before. As we get now more than a quarter into the season, that's probably not coming back. You think you need to readjust your reality that that fastball is not going to be an overpowering pitch the way that it has the potential to be. And instead he's going to have to reinvent himself quite a bit. But his fastball command was pretty good in this one, especially a couple of fastballs at the top of the zone that he located really well once he got ahead in the count. It all really starts with getting ahead in the count and then being able to locate. His changeup was probably as good as we've seen this year, for sure. I got to give him some credit for that. And that was what's complicated is that pitch is at its best when his fastball is what it used to be. And now that those pitches have the differential between them is not the same anymore. And that leads to not as many swings and misses. That leads to just extending at bats until he makes a mistake. And in this game, I thought the changeup was sharper than we had seen. In connection to the Ryan Weathers start, I think you do need to point out that the Tigers weren't getting off their A swings for the most part in this matchup right here. I felt like there were situations, especially in the early innings, where it seemed like they had a chance to break through and score, and they just didn't do it. And that allowed him to settle in. The thing with Trevor also, especially this year, Kevin Burrell, he wrote about it in an article on our site right before the start, is how he gets significantly worse as he gets deeper into the games. The first time through the order to the second time, there's a big drop off. Then there's another drop off from the second time to the third time. And in this game, that wasn't the case. So I think that was kind of the most encouraging thing, is that I felt like his best pitching actually came in that third, fourth, and fifth inning, instead of what is usually the other way around, where he starts off shaky and it only gets worse. So that was the most encouraging part, that he was the best. He saved the best for himself as the game went on. He probably could have gone even deeper into the game. I think that was a sign, just acknowledging the reality that they wanted to get him out of there on a positive note. They want to put him in a situation where he could leave this game with nothing but good vibes. And when you throw up 5 zeros, I mean, that is about as good as it could be. So definitely he took care of business. I'll give him a lot of credit for that. And he certainly steadied any of the concerns about him at least sticking in this rotation for the near future, as long as he's performing the way that he did against the Tigers.
Excuse me. To Nate, I would ask you, with Trevor Rogers, is he the pitcher that maybe concerns you the most in this rotation? Just how up and down he's been. Again, giving up maybe, earned runs against, Oakland. He had the game Washington, but in other times, I feel like the majority of his outings this season, he's going 5 innings. He's gone 5 innings multiple times. I believe 5 2/3. He's gone maybe twice, 3 times. So he's giving you innings. It's just he's giving up hits and giving up earned runs. So do you think Trevor Rogers is maybe the most concerning pitcher in this rotation currently?
Yeah, it's kind of unfair, but I think he has to be. I'd say it's unfair because if you remember, he's had some shaky defense, like that start against Atlanta at Truist. There was some bad defense behind him. And even in Oakland, what got the rally started was a Shea Langoliers triple that Jazz, I think, could have caught in center. And that kind of started things for him. It all kind of accumulated last week against Philly when he lost his, started throwing his glove everywhere and stuff. But he does concern me only because he's been so inconsistent. He does give you innings, like you said, but his command's been off. But I was encouraged yesterday because he only had 2 walks, and like Eli mentioned, he has to mix his off-speed pitches in there more, and he did look better at it. He had 6 strikeouts, so just only because a lot of the other guys in the rotation are more proven, I do have to give it to Trevor as being the most worrisome, I guess. But if he can build off this start, I think it was just what the doctor ordered, a shaky Detroit lineup, and he looked good. And like Eli said, pulled him out on a high note. So hopefully this can keep him going through a May and into June.
Yeah, and his FIP, more than a point under what his ERA is. So that should really tell you how Trevor is, and just including, you mentioned his defense, and maybe he's been unlucky at times. So he's pitching as a pitcher that's 4.33, and I really, including him being so shaky as he's been so far this year. But let's go ahead. We just mentioned him to Kevin. Eli, talk to us about Mr. Sixto Sanchez. We have to. Wouldn't it be
yeah. It's interesting with him in this start. This was another one where at least the runs were unearned, but the reason why he didn't work deeper into the game is because of this misplay between Otto Lopez and Vidal Brujan, where the flip was a little offline to second base, and also Brujan just dropped it even when he should have probably been able to adjust to it. With Sixto, I mean, early in the game, it was concerning. To that point, I think that was only in the second inning where those runs came across, and it looked like it could be a really messy night for him, and actually really settled down from there. His velocity went up quite a bit as he went the second time through the lineup. I think he was kind of maxing out around 94 the first time through, and then as it goes on, more 96s and maybe 197 in there with him. Ultimately, as we're getting like a bigger sample of Sixto, what continues to concern me is that the off-speed pitches just aren't moving the way that they used to before his injury, and that doesn't seem to be coming back. That honestly has never really come back, even during like the brighter moments for him. It's so hard for him to get swinging strikes, for him to get any whiffs whatsoever with the way that his stuff is nowadays. And so that is, I still have pretty steep concerns about. Yeah, thank you to our recent guest, Alex Carr, for hopping in right here. I still have the same worries about him as before. And you posed a question to Nate about whether Trevor's the one that you're most concerned of in this rotation. I think it is Sixto, because the combination of that, what I mentioned, and also that even when things go right, there's not the trust in him to work deep into the game because of his injury history. He won about 83 pitches in this most recent start. I mean, his workload actually is really similar to Trevor's, But even when things are going well, 81, I should say, in his most recent outing, and that was the season high with him. Understandably, there are concerns about him. The plan was not to have him in the rotation right now. This is kind of by necessity where he has to be on the roster, and they don't have a ton of alternatives available right now. I'm pretty concerned about how things are going to go. This is, as we slowly transition to this Mets series, he's going to be pitching that final game. So this will be, I don't even want to say a big test for him because I feel like I have a clear idea of who he is at this point. But this is his latest opportunity to maybe exceed expectations and surprise me and prove some people wrong if he has success against the Mets. The Mets team has more slugging in their lineup than the Tigers do. So when he makes mistakes, they're going to capitalize on them maybe a little bit more than the Tigers did. It was better. It got better as he got deeper into this outing with him. And I just don't know what to really be looking forward to unless his secondary pitches really get back to what they used to be in some way. He's just going to be really reliant on the defense behind him at this point. And as we've touched on, that's not really a great place to be with the quality of this defense.
Yeah. We'll go to Nate and to finish off this last series. The last thing we'll talk about the return of AJ Puck, pitched in 2 games, 1.1 innings. Safe to say the starter experiment is over, done, goodbye, not going to happen again. Just failed there in terms of AJ Puck as a starter. But Nate, what did you see in AJ Puck's return? He got the save. He came back. He looked strong. What did you see from Puck in his limited pitching appearances finally as a reliever?
Biggest thing for him was how confident he looked out there compared to when he started. Remember the first game against Pittsburgh? First inning, he was sweating everywhere. He couldn't locate the zone at all. Gets out there in Pittsburgh, it's like he never missed a day out there in the bullpen. Settles in perfectly. Gets out of his first appearance, I believe. But his pitches looked good. I mean, I mentioned last stream, I said that he could get high leverage role pretty quickly, especially with how the Marlins bullpen's done this year. And Skip still trusts him, and he looked great. Hopefully the Mets series can keep it going. But him using his fastball, I mentioned also last stream, when he gets hurt when he uses his fastball too much and hitters can sit on it. But when he mixes in his other pitches that he's added when he did become a starter, I believe he can still be very useful in the bullpen. And I'm very encouraged at what he did in Detroit.
Yeah. So we'll go in from there. And maybe now we'll do a little bit of a break. We're going to keep things shorter this stream. So we'll go ahead into a break. After this break, we'll go ahead, finally jump into this Mets series. We're going to meet the Mets, see what's happening there. A lot of turmoil happening. Steve Cohen mentioning he might be selling, he might not be selling, but stay tuned as we will be back and we have a flipped fish as well. Eli, if you can give us that flipped fish.
Yeah, we'll do that before going into the break right here. You know how we do right here. A player who was with both of these organizations at some point during their careers, both the Marlins and their opposing team right here. I'd say this one is it's not easy, but it's right around average in terms of difficulty for what we've done right here. So a former left fielder and first baseman, a big guy, 6'5", that played a long career from 93 to 2009, 26 WAR in his career, 233 homers, quite a few stolen bases as well. And overall, just a really good player that had significant time with both of these franchises right here. Think it over. We'll be back after the break with the reveal and to give you the rest of the show. So stick with us on FOF Live.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
All right, and we are back as always, FOF Live, presented by Berger and Hicks. And I think someone from our staff might have gotten it, Eli. I don't know.
They did. Very impressive. I don't know if Kevin cheated. He is inside here, so he can see the graphic that I already had available. But I think he got that on his own. I think he did right there with Cliff Floyd. was excellent with the Marlins. In particular, was it 2000 or 2001 where he was their all-star representative and he got some down ballot MVP votes? 2001. But he had a 968 OPS, 31 homers, drove in over 100 runs. And then he went on to play with the Mets in his early 30s for 4 seasons later on. Yeah, really good career that Cliff Floyd had.
All right, now it's time to go ahead, look at the lineups, look at the Mets. First time Marlins will be seeing the Mets this season. As always with the Mets, it always seems like something is happening. They want to have a great season, and it turns out to be a little less than stellar, including this season. Eli, give us a little bit of an overview of the Mets. Maybe, someone who hasn't kept up with the Mets or watching for the first time. How would you describe the Mets in 2024?
They did not go into the season with especially high expectations. They didn't really add a ton compared to last year. Well, a couple of the new guys are in their lineup tonight. You got Harrison Bader, who plays part-time in center field and in the corners. And you have JD Martinez, who they signed at the last minute, and he's in the lineup, I suppose, every day. Wait to see exactly what they're going to get out of him. They added a few of these position player role guys to try to raise the floor of their offense, and it's been all right, but the main thing is they didn't really do a whole lot to tighten up their rotation. Even last year, with the injuries that both Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander had early in the year, they never really reached expectations, and they ended up trading both of those guys, eating quite a bit of the money to get rid of those. And Steve Cohen, as deep as his pockets are, it's not that he didn't really shop at a super high end to replace them in that rotation. They got Sean Manaea, who we're going to see in this series. They picked up in a trade Eric Lauer, who off the top of my head, I think has been pretty bad for them this year. No, not Eric Lauer. It was that other Brewers guy, Adrian Hauser. Yeah, who's been a 7.44 ERA for them in 8 appearances and 6 starts. Jose Quintana has been up and down, more down than up right there. Their rotation is pretty bad, and their lineup is middling, and their defense is also, they're just across the board an average to below average team that at times would seem to be looking like they were on a good track as of a few weeks ago, but now they're on down times again. They got pretty lucky just to win one game against the Phillies yesterday. I was watching it very intensely that Edwin Diaz already blew a save. That was one of their main advantages compared to last year, is Edwin Diaz coming back from that gruesome WBC injury that he suffered. He has already blown as many saves this year as he did in all of 2022 when he was one of the best closers in all of baseball right there. So that's been one thing that they were hoping would maybe give them a chance of sneaking into a wild card spot, that unless he really stabilizes himself, I just don't know if the ceiling on this team is really there to be that great. So they entered this series, I think 3 games below 500 at 20-23. And I think that is kind of what they're going to continue to be the rest of the year, where they're clearly better than the Marlins. They're going to have the advantage even in this series. You could say especially so. They're one of those fan bases that gets a whole lot of their own faithful to show out to Lone Depot Park when they come to town in this series. But that being said, overall, it's one that has quite a bit of star power on it. But in terms of talent level, I think they're kind of just heading in the same direction that they were last year, which means that they're going to be an interesting team to follow leading up to the trade deadline. If they don't significantly improve, they have some of these guys on shorter term deals headlined by Pete Alonso, of all of them, that would be interesting chips to put on the market as a seller if they actually are going to go in that direction.
All right. Before we get into a little more in the lineups on the Marlins side and maybe some underrated players that we could see this series, let's go ahead to our press box report from Mr. Kevin Barra on location, looking dapper and amazing as per usual. Kevin, talk to us.
Nothing much. What's up, guys? Filling up pretty quickly here at Lone Depot Park. I want to say more Mets fans right now, but just another Friday 7-10 start. Not much going on here today, to be honest with you.
Anything from Skip, injury report, anything that maybe the fans should be updated on?
Yeah, definitely. I think the big one on the injury report, which I think Eli will put me up right here. We have Xavier Edwards traveling to Jacksonville. He's going to play with them tomorrow. I believe he was placed on the 60-day IL. It was retroactive, so he's able to come back towards the end of the month. Shagwa pitched in the FCL game. Tim Anderson, that's not included here. Skip told us that he will be going to Jacksonville tonight and will be playing tomorrow. So you would assume Xavier Edwards plays a little second base while Tim Anderson is going to be the shortstop for Jacksonville for I believe, the next couple of days. So should be interesting there. Edward threw a bullpen. That's big. And aside from that, it's your usual, continuing the rehab process with Avi, Sandy, and Yuri all here in Miami, getting some work in.
Well, yeah, to go over those TA and the Edwards news, TA is eligible to come off the IL on Tuesday, and that sounds like what's going to happen, that it'll be a minimum IL stint with him where he plays Saturday and Sunday in Jacksonville. And then, I mean, he wasn't really gone very long in the first place. So that will be interesting to follow because I was somebody that I advocated for giving him a breather and a little bit of time off to really reset because he was not really getting any better as this was going on. As Kevin mentioned with Edwards, that's all retroactive to the start of the season, the 60 days, which means that he's eligible to come off next weekend potentially. And that'll be an interesting decision to make as well. But yeah, in the short term, I guess this means, wouldn't you say, Kevin, that Tristan Gray, his cup of coffee might be coming to an end if TA comes back? He would seem to be the obvious guy to get squeezed off the roster.
Yeah, and it's going to be a couple tough decisions because you have Xavier Edwards, as you mentioned, who was with the team throughout the entirety of big league camp. He looked good for the most part, and that's definitely a decision you're going to look into making because you have an Otto Lopez who's been really good, and then you have Xavier Edwards who fits more into your future and what you want to do there. So definitely a tough decision there. But yeah, I think Tristan Gray's time here with the Marlins, at least the big league team, will be coming to an end. We'll see what they do. I believe they have some flexibility to make moves on that 40-man with, I believe you have Emmanuel Ramirez on there still. So that's the guy you can probably DFA to make room. And then you still have Razaban on there. It's a weird situation with the 40-man, but definitely still options you could have. And again, as you mentioned, Eli, some tougher decisions coming up.
Yeah, and going up against the Mets, Eli mentioned them there. What are you seeing there? I know there are a couple former Marlins on the team. Didn't get a chance to see Joey Wendell as he was DFA'd, but how do you see them or any Marlins currently going up to any of the former guys on the Mets?
Yeah, I didn't see too much of them. Obviously, Starlin Marte is the big name on that team. I don't know how he's been doing this season. I'll have to check. I know he had a really, really bad 2023 season. He's back with the Mets, probably, I believe, playing center field, right field, really moving around that outfield there for them. Then Jorge Lopez, who's been really good for them this season, I believe. And I think aside from that, yeah, Wendell was the other one. So only two former Mets on this team, and it's a relatively fun team. You're bringing up younger prospects soon. I'm going to watch one tonight in Christian Scott. He's been really good for the Mets in his first few starts. So interested to see how that'll go for the Marlins. A lot of, generates a lot of swing and miss. Uses, I believe, 4 pitches. And definitely got one I'm really excited to watch. But Jorge Lopez gets his revenge in Miami hopefully tonight, I guess.
Before we let you go, Kevin, last thing I wanted to ask you: what do the Marlins have to do in this series to take the win? What do they have to do if they want to sweep or if they want to take 2 out of 3? What is the main thing the Marlins have to get right?
You got to hit. I think it comes down to that. The pitching seems to be shaping up. Luzardo is coming off a great start against Philadelphia, one of the best teams in baseball. And then you have, I believe tomorrow, I want to say it's Braxton. And then you have Sixto. So we'll see. Sixto's start is definitely a questionable one. Braxton looked good, despite what the box score said. And then it's the Mets rotation that's definitely interesting. When you have Luis Severino in the middle, who's shown flashes of really good moments this season, and then what his career has been, which has been fairly disappointing. And then you have Sean Manaea, who's been really good for the Knights. So it'll be interesting. Just got to get to their pitching. I think tonight's definitely the toughest task with Christian Scott on the mound, a guy who you aren't too familiar with, but has shown that he can be one of the best pitching prospects in baseball.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. We'll have his prediction video at the end of the stream. As always, you can check out Kevin on Twitter for all the updates on tonight's game. So let's head back to that lineup, Eli, and we could maybe now take a look on the Marlins side of it. And some guys that have really been on some hot streaks. I think one guy we have to mention has been Nick Gordon. Surprisingly enough, on the team, he had, I believe, 816 OPS in May. One of the surprising players this season. Nate, what is it about maybe some of these underrated guys? You look at Nick Gordon, Otto Lopez, Brujan again, who have just been having surprisingly not bad, pretty good seasons compared to maybe what we thought of going into the year.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the hitting philosophy that the Marlins have, really focusing on putting the ball in play. Gordon had a lot of trouble in Minnesota with his strikeout numbers, and he still strikes out at a decent clip in Miami. But putting the ball in play and using his speed to his advantage, putting the ball in the gaps has been really good. And when it comes to guys like Otto Lopez and Vidal Brujan, it's just getting them consistent playing time, I think. Brujan really didn't get a fair shot in Tampa, and Otto Lopez has been everywhere. And just getting those guys in and getting them good reps has been good. And even with guys like DLC, who was kind of a platoon guy last year, not really a full platoon, but didn't really get the chance to play every single day. And he had it this year, and he's probably going to be the Marlins All-Star. So when it comes to guys like that, I'd probably just say putting the ball in play and just seeing what happens.
I need to show you guys something on Nick Gordon that I had been thinking about, and I didn't realize how crazy it was until pulling up the game logs. This is Nick Gordon in May, where the overall numbers are good. There's that 4-hit game against the A's. There's that 3-hit game against the Phillies and a 3-hit game against the Tigers. And there are 2 total hits in the entire month outside of those games. Those 3 games are actually over 40% of his hits this entire season.
Wow.
So I don't know what to make of that. I would say I lean towards that being not super encouraging when you clump your hits in just a few really hot days. In these situations against what tend to be softer opponents that you're doing it, starting pitchers that you're going up in those particular games. So I'm not buying it super heavily. I just can't think of any other guys, at least on this team or on many others, that have had so much of their production concentrated in just like a few really excellent days. And then outside of that, they've been zeros. Unfortunately, as you also see here in the walks, he's drawn 1 walk during this entire month. And even this season in total, 4 walks in total as we get over a quarter of the way into the season with him. So he's really reliant on just a few really excellent days where everything comes together. I think I need to dive a little deeper into that in terms of why it is on those particular days he's able to produce, not just against the starters, but also the relievers coming in behind him. Yeah, he's an interesting case with that, where overall I'm not all that sold on it, but for the meantime, he is going to be in there every single day against right-handed pitching. And he'll just need to be a little bit more consistent, I think, in order for that role to change whatsoever. He'll have to spread out his production a little bit more than he is, because on most nights, unfortunately, he's an offensive liability.
He doesn't have 5 strikeouts the entire month, which is what I said. It is encouraging. He is very, I guess when you're hot some days, but I'd say it's definitely an improvement from what we've seen in March and April. So I don't really buy it either, but if you just can spread them out a little bit more evenly, we might have something with Nick Gordon.
Yeah, I think you kind of take that when you have a guy who's like your 4th outfielder to come into some spots, maybe play some other positions, not really a relatively full-time guy. But let's talk about a full-time guy and a guy who's just been struggling in Jake Burger. We mentioned the splits. I know, I believe Eli or might have been Lewis put out a tweet on the slump he's been. Here's the slump for May. In 34 at-bats, his batting average is 0.088, an OPS of 0.176, 3 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts. What is going wrong with Jake Burger? This is a guy in the beginning of the season before the injury. It seemed like he was a shoo-in to be the best player on the Marlins, all-star, everything. In team seemed like everything was going Jake Burger's way. But since that injury, since coming back, he's just fallen off a cliff. He's already at a negative WAR, almost a full point on a negative WAR. It just seems like something needs to change with Jake Burger. Might have to go down. Something needs to change. Phantom IL, something with Jake Burger. What do you guys believe is going wrong with Jake Burger?
Well, what I can rule out is that he does look healthy. It doesn't seem that they rushed him back from the IL. There have been moments, even during the slump, where seeing him busted down the first base line, he's running as well as ever. Even last year, he was somebody that is sneaky athletic despite his build, and he's still moving around pretty well. So there doesn't seem to be any hesitation for him to actually exert his full force. And there have been a couple of hard hit balls that show that he still has that in him, because that is ultimately the most important factor in his success, being able to crush balls. He's a guy that tops the charts in exit velocity, especially on this roster right here. But it is worth just reminding people that his track record in the majors is pretty short. Prior to last year, he hadn't done much of anything at the big league level. Even that production he had with the White Sox before the trade last year, there was some streakiness in there because of his tendency. He's a relatively aggressive hitter. He chases outside the zone a lot, and he swings and misses on a lot of those pitches, or at least he did before coming over in the trade last year. I wouldn't say that I'm overly concerned about him being a major leaguer. Like I do think that they're going to give him everyday reps to figure this out right here. And the strikeout rate, as you see right here, that's not really that alarming. That's actually kind of perfectly in line with what he had over the course of last season, 23% right there. So it's not even more. It's not even like there's a ton of swing and miss in there. I think this is a small enough sample that there is some bad luck in it. There's some just not quite having the timing that you'd want to have if you were playing more consistently over a larger sample of time. I would say that's something to dive into more if he has another bad weekend, if he has another offer this weekend and doesn't do much of anything. I think he's getting close to being not last year's version of himself, but at least being a solid everyday player right here. Yeah, not overly concerned quite yet, but I think this is somewhat of a rude awakening for people that were hoping that he was going to be a 300 hitter the way that he was at the end of last year. I think he's somebody that a lot of his production is going to be concentrated on extra base hits, and that in between those extra base hits, there are going to be some empty plate appearances.
Yeah. Nate, are there any other guys? We mentioned Jake Burger going through a slump, or any other players on the Marlins that may be catching your eye in terms of maybe they're heading towards a downward trajectory, maybe so far this season, who may be guys who need to pick it up if they want to continue to be hot?
Josh Bell was struggling earlier in the year. He's kind of picked it up. Jesus Sanchez he's been middling all season, I guess. Let's say Jesus Sanchez. There's so much red on his profile, which is how it always has been with him. He hits the ball really hard. It's just his contact rate, and maybe not the most. He might not have the highest baseball IQ, I'd say. He's shown that a couple of times this year, but especially the way that DLC is broken out. I mean, DLC and Jesus Sanchez have been pretty much compared to each other their entire career. Acquired around the same time, they pretty much platoon for each other last year. But I mean, if you can just translate that red into more, success on the field, I'd say. But it's kind of unfair because, as we mentioned, it's been mainly Burger that's been slumping. But a little Jesus Sanchez breakout and a little hot streak would be nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And going there, we can go a little bit and talk about Brax and Jesus Luzardo and Sixto. Eli, with those three, which one maybe intrigues you the most in terms of what they will probably see in this Mets lineup?
I am most intrigued by what Braxton is going to do. Kevin mentioned it during his press box report that I thought he was a lot better than the final line suggested in his season debut. He was charged with 5 earned runs, but 2 of them were inherited runners that came in to score after he left the game. And then the 3 that he gave up himself, all that happened in the first inning when he gave a bomb to Castellanos. And in between, in those middle innings, he showed a lot of, I would say, vintage Brax stuff. The command that he had, the chases he was getting on his slider when it's right below the zone. Like, he's somebody that, even though he doesn't throw hard, there are days where he is a legitimate power pitcher and he could get a lot of swings and misses. So I will be intrigued to see if he could do that again. That Mets lineup that you'll see when he pitches, it should be pretty similar to the one that they're using tonight against Luzardo right here. And it's one that, as I touched on, is like not quite as good as they were praying it could be. JD Martinez not being the very best version of himself. I guess, yeah, it's really Alonso, and outside of him, it's a pretty significant drop off to the production that they're getting the other spots in their lineup, all the way down. So it's a lineup that is an experienced group, but one that is not going to have a whole lot of power threats outside of Alonso against Brax. So I think there's a path to him having a much better outing than he had before. He was somebody that entering the season, I made a bold prediction that he was going to take a big step back from 2023, just not based on a whole lot other than just the thin margin for error that you have if you're somebody that's just throwing 90 at the big league level. In this day and age, it's really, you need to be so precise with your commands, and you have to have a really deep bag of pitches to go to that over the course of the season, I don't know entirely what to expect of him. And so every single start with Brax, I'm going to be curious to follow. He's that guy that he's in that interesting position where he accomplished so much last year. At the same time, because of those stuff limitations, and also because he's not even eligible for arbitration yet, I don't know if he's like a strong trade candidate. I think he's going to be a Marlin this year and beyond, no matter what he does this year, because of that. He's not that traditional trade chip guy. So he's somebody that I want to follow closely just because I think he's going to be around no matter what. And so obviously it's better for the team if he succeeds. And there is that blueprint that he showed last year that he could have that success. But it's always dicey when you're coming off a shoulder issue that cost him that chunk of the season so far. And because we've only seen one start of him since coming back from that, every single time you watch him pitch is going to be a pretty big learning experience.
Now let's go to series predictions. Again, we're gonna keep this a little shorter for you guys to go out there, enjoy the game, enjoy the Panthers game as well. Lots of things happening in South Florida. So
I have a new video. I have a new intro video for
this. Let's go.
Nothing fancy, but we needed something in here after having a hiatus for a while.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
So yeah, we went with an assistant GM, Gabe Kapler.
Assistant GM, influencer, motivational speaker, TikToker, everything.
Yeah, so let us get to the leaderboard first. So where we're at after, I think this is already going to be the 15th series that we've had this season. It's still our host on top, Daniel Rodriguez, by a single point over a few of our super subs. Nate has passed me. I guess he passed me even before this past series. But he's been doing pretty well. I'm being flanked by our top two staffers in terms of accuracy on this. And yeah, there's a peek at the leaderboard. A reminder to everybody else out there, if you become a super sub, fishabonfirst.com/subscriptions, you could make these predictions along with us through the entire season. Still early enough that you can catch up quite a bit, even if you got off to a late start so far. But as you can see, a lot of congestion atop the leaderboard. We've had over 54. I think we're up to 54 different people that are on that leaderboard, either as super subs or staffers or live stream guests that we've had this season. We have our video that we could go to now from Kevin and Isaac at the ballpark. So here's what they have to say on the series.
Already Marlins Mets series predictions. I'm going to say that the Marlins will take 2 out of 3, and Brian De La Cruz is going to be my series MVP.
All right, I believe that the Mets are going to take 2 out of 3 in this one, and the MVP will be left-handed pitcher Sean Manaea.
Back to you, Eli.
Yeah. Ooh, Sean Manaea having pretty solid season after becoming a reliever and now back to starter. But let's get that music going. Let's see who's going to lead us off. Usually it's Kevin, but I'll do it. I'll lead off tonight. Again, with the Marlins, I'm going to continue the trend to them to prove me wrong. I'm going to go Mets take 2 out of 3. MVP Polar Bear Pete Alonso, 2 home runs this series. Mystery Line.
I will go with the Mets to win 2 out of 3 in this series. It will be a very closely fought series between these teams, but ultimately I think the Mets have just enough of a talent edge in several departments for them to squeeze this one out. And I will give the MVP honors to old friend Starling Marte.
Ooh.
He's got to be a little bit better than he was last season, and he's been up and down here in 2024. But he's had some really impressive moments in this ballpark while he was a Marlin, and I think we'll see at least one more now as a Marlins opponent this weekend as the Mets win the series.
All right, let's go to Nate.
Marlins have won 3 out of their past 4. I'm gonna ride the wave. I need to get points on Daniel, so I'm gonna take the Marlins in this series. My MVP is gonna be Brian De La Cruz. He's been hot for the past couple of weeks. Career 278 hitter against the Mets with 4 home runs. I think he adds one this series. Marlins take 2 out of 3.
Ooh, all right, a lot of contention. Marlins, Mets. We'll see what happens. You folks go check it out. As always, this is FOF Live presented by Burger and Hicks. For myself, Daniel, Eli, Nate, Isaac, and Kevin at the ballpark. Always go fish.